Hello folks, my name is Gary Saylor. Today's topic is sneaker waves and how to avoid them. I'm going to explain what sneaker waves are and how they pose a danger to you and your family. In preparation for this safety briefing, I studied 98 sneaker wave incidents, and I'm going to share with you some details that I don't think you'll see anywhere else. I'm also going to share 11 safety tips that I developed based on my research. You can use these safety tips to protect yourself and your loved ones from becoming victims of these deadly sneaker waves. Let's get started. Sneaker waves are large waves that occur unexpectedly and are normally about twice the size of preceding waves, although sometimes they can even be much larger than that. Sneaker waves can harm swimmers in the ocean or beachgoers simply walking along the beach. The wash from a sneaker wave normally goes about 150 feet further up the beach than a typical wave, although some sneaker waves go much further depending on the topography or landscape of the beach. Sneaker waves are packed with energy. They usually catch beachgoers by surprise, and thus the name sneaker wave. It sneaks up on you. Being startled by a large wave of freezing cold water can also create momentary shock, causing disorientation and a delayed response. Sneaker waves are massive. They're fast-moving and unpredictable. They occur without warning, and they rush up the beach faster than a person can run, often knocking beachgoers off their feet and sometimes dragging them back into the water, frequently into dangerously cold water. Sneaker waves are often referred to by different names, such as rogue waves, which is incorrect because rogue waves only occur out in the ocean. They are also referred to as sleeper waves and storm waves, and occasionally as freak waves. I also want to share with you a typical sneaker wave tragedy. On January 3rd, 2021, at 2 p.m., Sarah and Michael Wyman and their two children, 4-year-old John and 7-year-old Anna, were walking along Blind Beach near Jenner, California, when they were hit by a sneaker wave. The family was walking along the base of a cliff as far from the water as they could get when they were hit by the sneaker wave. There was nowhere for them to run for safety. No escape. As the sneaker wave bounced back off of the steep hill or the cliffside, they were easily swept into the ocean. The mother managed to make it to safety. She climbed out of the water. The two children were immediately swept away. The father, 40-year-old Michael Wyman, he swam out to save his children, but unfortunately, he drowned during the attempted rescue. The father's body was recovered soon after the incident, but the children's bodies have never been found during subsequent days of searching. The family was walking along a narrow part of the beach during high surf warnings, which had been going on for several days. I mean, we're talking about 22-foot waves and 40-mile-per-hour winds, which they either didn't know about before leaving the house, which would be a major failure in planning by not checking the weather conditions before leaving for the beach, or they ignored the warnings. The Wyman family had recently moved from Oakland to Petaluma, California. Both cities are about 30 to 60 minutes from the ocean. It's very possible that they had no knowledge of sneaker waves and just how deadly they can be. This graph shows that most victims, about 60%, possibly higher because of the unknowns, are from the interior of the country and not familiar with sneaker waves. The purpose of this safety briefing is to help educate everyone about the dangers of sneaker waves and how to avoid them. So, what causes sneaker waves? Scientists believe that sneaker waves are created by the wind associated with storms. The energy in the wind is transferred to the water, which creates the wave. The storm can be at the beach, it can be around the beach area, it can be far away from the beach. Sneaker waves can travel hundreds of miles. This explains why sneaker waves often arrive on sunny, calm days, giving beachgoers a false sense of safety. Scientists also believe that sneaker waves can sometimes run into other waves traveling in the same direction but at different speeds, and then they run into each other and they become bigger and more powerful. If you're wondering if sneaker waves are dangerous, this graph shows that of the 98 sneaker waves in this study, there were 110 deaths and 44 injuries. Of course, these are incidents that made it into the local news because someone died. There's no way to know how many sneaker wave incidents have occurred where the victim survived and never made it into the news. Given that, I believe these numbers are still significant and warrant elevated safety practices when visiting beaches where sneaker waves are prevalent. Another important number to mention is the number of victims that were able to escape the waves, 107. These are beachgoers that were caught in the wash of the wave while on the beach, but were able to escape. And 53 victims who were swept into the ocean, but managed to make it back out safely. It's critical that you understand that if you become a victim of a sneaker wave, it is survivable. There are 5 main areas where beachgoers have been victims of sneaker waves. This graph shows most victims were on the beach, 52, which makes a lot of sense. 29 were on rock outcroppings. 7 were swimming or surfing. 5 were on jetties, and 4 were on a seawall or boardwalk. I will address each of these areas. Safety tip number 1, prior planning. Safety starts by planning your beach visit before you leave your home. Now, I know prior planning sounds like a cliche, but it is critical for you to do some planning before you leave the house. Your life and the lives of your family members may depend on how well you plan your beach trip. Start by checking the National Weather Service website at the URL shown here. There are several things that you need to check out. First, look for warnings. Check to see if there are any warnings about hazardous conditions in the area you're planning to visit. So look at also surf height. The surf height will depend on your physical condition and experience of swimming in the ocean, and whom you're bringing with you to the beach. Tide forecast. Know the tide cycle. Looking up the tide cycle at the National Weather Service will give you the times of high and low tide throughout the day. As the tide comes in, the water rises, reducing the dry shoreline, and the dry land becomes more limited, reducing your options to escape from sneaker waves. An incoming tide can overwhelm a previously wet beach in minutes at some locations, leaving you swimming far from the beach. A scary thought. It's generally safer to be at the beach during an outgoing tide, especially in locations where sneaker waves are prevalent. When planning your beach trip, consider arriving at the beach during an outgoing tide and leaving before the tide starts coming in. Water temperature. Check the water temperature of where you're going. Being swept into cold water can cause immediate life-threatening effects like involuntary gasping for air, even when you're underwater, cardiac arrest at any age or level of fitness, temporary paralysis, hypothermia, and vertigo and disorientation when the cold water enters your ear. I had vertigo underwater as a scuba diver. It's no fun. According to the National Weather Service, cold shock can occur in water 60 degrees and below. However, water as warm as 77 degrees can cause gasping for air. So if you're asking, how does this relate to sneaker waves? It's related in a couple of ways. In areas where sneaker waves are more prevalent, the water is usually, not always, but usually very cold. Secondly, when a sneaker wave hits a beachgoer, it often knocks them off their feet and then quickly drags them into the ocean, making cold water shock a serious concern. Fog. Don't go to the beach if there is heavy fog. The fog prevents you from watching the surf. If a sneaker wave is approaching, you won't see it coming. Wind. Wind can create high surf, so you need to know what the wind is doing and if it will grow stronger during your stay at the beach. Well, that completes the weather portion of the planning section. Now, let's look at some other items to be considered, such as how remote is the beach that you're going to? You can use Google Maps or any mapping program to determine how far the beach is from civilization and potential help. In my study of sneaker waves, I found that about 54% of the beaches were considered remote or difficult to reach. Staying with this issue of remoteness, let's consider additional hazards associated with remote or secluded beaches. How about lifeguards? Secluded beaches normally do not have any lifeguards. Check to see if there are lifeguards at the beach you're planning to visit. Lifeguards can dramatically reduce the incidence of drowning. Always much safer to go to a beach with lifeguards. Beach goers. Populated beaches increase the chances of being rescued. At remote beaches, there may be no one to call 911 or to assist you in an emergency. Communications. You need the ability to call for help in case of an emergency. Check with your cell phone carrier to see if service is available at a particular remote location or not. When you arrive at the beach, test your cell phone to ensure that it works or find a reliable form of communication at the beach. If communications are not available, consider looking for a different beach. Another consideration is rescue personnel. Understand that remote or secluded beaches can delay rescue efforts if they should be needed. If you hiked for 2 hours through rough terrain and then climbed down a steep mountain to reach a beautiful secluded beach, the kind you see in those movies, keep in mind that the rescue team would have to make that same arduous trek, but they would be carrying a bunch of medical equipment. On February 26, 2021, two friends, ages 23 and 18, were fishing off the rocks at Mermaid Beach, about 50 miles from the town of Albany in Western Australia. The two men were swept off the rocks into 62-degree turbulent water. The 18-year-old drowned right away. The 23-year-old survived, but because of the remote location of the beach, the 23-year-old had to tread water for 90 minutes, an hour and a half, before a rescue boat could pull him out of the cold water. Amazingly, he survived. Safebeach.org Australia lists this beach as extremely hazardous. Police reported that during this incident, water conditions were treacherous and neither of the boys was wearing a life vest. Helicopters and boats are not always available, and if they are, sometimes they have to travel long distances to arrive on the scene. So please remember that remote beaches can delay rescue efforts. Who's going to the beach? Consider each person's experience with the ocean and plan accordingly. Health or physical condition? Consider any physical limitations that you or your family members may have. Poor vision, hearing loss, high blood pressure, overweight, recent hip, knee surgery, etc. Don't go to a risky beach unless everyone is healthy and experienced. And I guess you could say that just about any beach is risky. Elderly members. If you are elderly or you're bringing elderly family members with you, consider staying at least 150 feet away from wet sand. Safety gear. Now, we've touched on many potential hazards associated with beaches in just the first safety tip prior planning. Hopefully, we have you thinking about safety gear. Safety gear can dramatically increase your family's chances of survival and your ability to conduct a successful rescue if needed. Safety gear must be part of your prior planning. So now that you've completed your prior planning and now you're ready to go to the beach, safety tip number 2. Always enter the beach at designated entrances. If you enter the beach from a footpath, which is not one of the designated entrances, you will miss important hazard warning signs that normally are located near the entrances. When you enter the beach, check for hazard signs, read the signs, and please heed the warnings. Let me read a few of these signs for you. First sign, dangerous surf. Surfing, wading, and swimming not advised. Shark area, strong undertows, currents, and sneaker waves. Enter at your own risk. Second sign starts with warning. Deadly sneaker waves and hazardous surf. 4 deaths from sneaker waves have occurred on this beach since 2004. The third sign, warning, this beach is dangerous for bathing at all times. Sign number 4, caution, rip currents. Sign number 5, warning, unusually high sneaker waves. Incoming tides isolate rocks from the shore. Deep water and strong outgoing currents. Overhanging cliffs and falling rocks. High waves sweep over rocks and jetties. Drift logs roll in the surf. High cliffs, no lifeguard. Wow. I want to illustrate how dangerous it can be if you miss the warning signs. On July 31st, 1983, at around 4:30 p.m., 12 men aged between 17 and 30 years old went swimming in the ocean off Doolin Beach, Ireland. They had just come from a music festival, and all 12 were believed to be tourists. There were warning signs at the beach, at the entrance of the beach, but it appears that the group entered the beach from a side area and did not see the warning signs, and therefore were unaware of the dangers associated with this beach. In addition, many locals were wading in the shallows, giving the appearance that the water was safe. But the locals knew very well that it was too dangerous to venture out from the shallows. One of the witnesses said that the water appeared to be peaceful. The men swam out to a sandbar, but were unable to swim back due to the strong currents. The strong currents and shifting sand swept the men off the sandbar that they were standing on and out to sea. Some members of their group, still on the shore, attempted to rescue their friends, and 2 of them drowned during the attempted rescue. The other 2 were picked up by a fishing boat that arrived on the scene. A total of 8 young men drowned that day. Authorities said that a strong coastal current, a subterranean river, and a turning tide going outward towards the ocean all combined to create treacherous conditions. But I want to mention some obvious causes of this tragedy. I don't mean to sound crude. Number 1, they were tourists and most likely unaware of the dangerous ocean conditions. Number 2, they entered the beach from a side area and did not see the hazard warning signs. Number 3, they got caught up in the moment by first seeing that the water appeared peaceful, and they also saw that many locals were wading in the shallows, which gave them a false sense of safety. What do you do if there are no signs? Upon arriving at the beach, follow the security tips in this briefing to further analyze the beach and potential hazards. If lifeguards are present, ask them if there are any hazards you need to be aware of. If there are no lifeguards, ask some locals. If you have any doubts, stay out of the water. Never climb over walkways or barriers. Walkways and barriers are in place to keep visitors safe. Never climb over them to find an alternative path to the beach. On February 7th, 2022, around 2:30 p.m., 3 cousins jumped over the Muir Beach Overlook fence. They scaled steep rocky cliffs to get down to the water's edge to go fishing. Once they were there, one of the cousins was washed off the rocks into the ocean. Another cousin jumped in to save him, but he couldn't because the waves were just too strong. His cousin drowned. The search for the missing cousin had to be delayed because of extreme ocean conditions, and you're going to hear that quite a bit. Safety tip number 3, observe the water and examine the beach. When you first arrive, before going in the water, observe the water and examine the beach for 30 minutes before deciding whether to stay or go. What are we looking for in the water? A, are the waves as forecast during prior planning, or have they become rough, too rough for your family? Are the waves breaking in very shallow water on the beach? These are known as body crushers, and they're very dangerous. Don't go in the water if the waves are breaking on the beach or in shallow water. C, watch for sneaker waves during the 30-minute observation. If you see sneaker waves, move further away from the water if you plan to stay, but don't go in the water. Remember that waves can be relatively calm, luring people to get closer to the water's edge and then exposing them to dangerous sneaker waves. D, look for rip currents, which cause many more drowning deaths than sneaker waves. If you're swimming, show your family where the rip currents are so that they can avoid them. If you're unsure of what a rip current looks like, go online and search for rip currents in your browser. Then click on images. You'll get numerous photos and some videos of rip currents. It's important that you familiarize yourself with these images because, like I said, rip currents kill many more people than sneaker waves, and you need to know what they look like. E, are there any hidden or protruding rocks in the water that you need to be aware of? The tide is going out, which might help you identify hidden rocks. F, are there any structures like piers or jetties to avoid? Those structures create currents that go out away from the shore and must be avoided. Are there any logs floating in the water or large branches or other debris that could become dangerous projectiles in a wave? Okay, now let's turn our attention to examining the beach and what to look for. What makes up the beach surface? Is it sand like most beaches that people visit? Is the sand somewhat firm, or is it so soft that it's laborious to walk on? Is the beach made of small gravel, large gravel, or larger rocks like bowling ball-sized rocks, which would make it difficult to run from a sneaker wave? The basic idea here is, if a sneaker wave is coming, can you run from it, or are there obstacles on the beach that would prevent you from escaping the sneaker wave? Another thing to look at related to the beach surface is how far up the beach is the sand wet. Is the sand wet past where the current waves are ending? That could be an indication of sneaker wave activity. Logs on the beach. Waterlogged or dry, tree trunks lying on the beach can weigh thousands of pounds. They appear safe, but they are a serious threat to your safety. Children are attracted to logs to climb and play on, and adults will sometimes jump on the logs to get out of the way of an approaching wave, even an approaching sneaker wave. Both scenarios are very dangerous because sneaker waves can easily lift or roll a log, knocking beachgoers to the ground and then rolling over them, causing death or serious injury. Does the beach have a steep incline into the water? Beaches with steep beach faces are particularly dangerous. The steep incline increases the speed at which the wash and the backwash go up and down the beach face. Anyone caught in the wash can easily be knocked over and then easily dragged back into the ocean. These beaches also have coarse sand that washes out from under their feet, making it more difficult to establish a footing and resist being pulled into the water. Another reason these beaches are so dangerous is that they usually have a deep trough running along the water's edge. The trough is dug out by the backwash of the wave racing back down the incline into the ocean. The wave comes in over the trough, creating this vertical whirlpool effect, making it very difficult to get out of if you're swept into the ocean by the backwash. And now let's add a sneaker wave to this scenario, and you have a very, very dangerous beach. Many people who have survived being swept into the ocean on these types of beaches have described their ordeal as being stuck inside of a washing machine. When visiting a beach like this, avoid walking on the beach face. Walk above the berm and keep your distance from the water. Never swim at beaches with a steep incline. Choose a flat beach instead. They're safer. If you're caught in the washing machine trough, you can swim further out in the direction of the ocean to escape the vertical cycle, and then yell for help. How wide is the beach? Is there ample space to set up your beach gear and not worry about sneaker waves? Is there sufficient space to run from a sneaker wave? Or is it so narrow that you can't escape a sneaker wave? Remember, a sneaker wave can travel 150 feet further up the beach than preceding waves, even further depending on the topography of the beach. Make sure the beach is wide enough for everyone in your party to be safe. If the beach is narrow and backed by cliffs or steep hillsides, you will have nowhere to run in the event of a sneaker wave. Imagine a narrow beach backed by cliffs at a high tide, potentially very dangerous, especially at a location where sneaker waves are common. Escape routes. Look for escape routes and set up your beach gear near them, just in case you need to use them. If a sneaker wave is headed toward you, you can always use the escape route to run for safety. Safety tip number 4, rock outcroppings, jetties, and seawalls. According to some officials, it's never completely safe for people to watch the waves or fish from a jetty, rock outcropping, or seawall. My research shows that 38% of sneaker wave incidents swept unsuspecting persons from rock outcroppings, jetties, and seawalls into the ocean. Many of these incidents ended in tragedy. Stormy weather. 38% of sneaker wave incidents in my research happened during rough or extreme conditions. 33% of the incidents did not report weather conditions at the time of the incident, so the actual numbers probably higher, much higher. The victims of these incidents should never have been at the beach, let alone on a rock outcropping or a jetty during rough conditions. Unfortunately, most victims of sneaker waves are tourists and unaware of the hazards associated with the ocean. And that's why I created this briefing, to get the word out. Even in calm weather, always watch approaching waves. Sneaker waves sometimes strike during sunny, calm days. You need to remain vigilant until you return to a safe location. Use a modified buddy system. If you're out on a rock outcropping or a jetty, have a friend or family member watch you from a safe location. If you're washed into the ocean, they can call 911. Never fish, walk, or lounge on rock outcroppings, jetties, or seawalls during stormy conditions. It's just too dangerous. Wear a life jacket. 38% of the sneaker wave incidents in this study are about people who have washed off the rock outcroppings, jetties, or seawalls into the ocean. None of them were wearing a life jacket. Not one of them. A life jacket could have saved many lives. In fact, in all 98 cases in my study, not one person was wearing a life jacket. There were only 1 or 2 cases where the person in the water was thrown some type of flotation device, but it never even made it to the person because the water's just too rough. And they ended up drowning anyway. We need to change this psychology of people that think, oh, I'm not going to be swimming while I'm at the beach, so I can just wear, my normal street clothes, and I don't have to wear a life jacket. I think we need to change the psychology to where I'm visiting a beach where sneaker waves are prevalent. I'm going to wear a wetsuit and a life vest. Otherwise, people are going to continue to be victims. Last resort, hug a large rock if you find yourself on a jetty and you happen to see a sneaker wave coming at you. You might be able to lay down and hug a large rock. Hold your breath and survive the wave passing over you. Wrap your arms and legs as far as you can around the rock. During my research, I found 2 incidents where a couple encountered sneaker waves while out on jetties. In both cases, the couples were able to survive the first wave. In one case, after they survived the first wave by holding on to large rocks, after the wave passed, they got up and they started running for safety. Unfortunately, they didn't see the next wave approaching them, and they were both swept into the ocean, and they both drowned. In the other incident, the husband held on to a light installation, like a metal frame affixed to the jetty, and his wife crouched down. It looked like she was trying to hold on to a rock. And they were able to hold on through the first couple of waves, but unfortunately, the third wave swept them both into the ocean, and they unfortunately also drowned. I want to make it perfectly clear that I do not support going out on jetties or rocks in rough or extreme conditions because all you have to do is hug a rock. That's not what I'm saying at all, and I don't want you to think that I'm trying to make that statement. I'm just sharing what 2 people did in 2 separate incidents when they were overtaken by a sneaker wave while on a jetty and almost survived. It's a last resort, no other options kind of a response. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. If anchor points are available or an anchor could be easily rigged, consider using a harness and tether when fishing from rock outcroppings or jetties. There was an incident in southern Australia that I was reading about. An owner of a fishing tackle shop said that someone had installed eye bolts or anchor points for fishermen fishing off the rocks at a nearby fishing spot. They did this because many fishermen had been washed into the ocean and drowned. So the owner explained that the eye bolts were installed on the rocks so that the fishermen could tie themselves down to the rocks to prevent from being washed into the ocean. Find safe escape routes. Getting washed off of a rock outcropping involves the added hazard of being smashed up against the rocks by the waves. In many cases where fishermen or visitors are washed off the rocks, it's safer for them to swim towards the ocean away from the rocks and wait for rescue. In some cases, it may be possible to climb out of the water. So when you arrive at a rock outcropping, try to identify a safe exit route out of the water. If there are none, consider moving to another location. I read about one incident where a guy had to tread water for a long time because the only safe location for him to exit the water was a beach 6 miles away. So he had to tread water until a boat could be sent to pick him up. Safety tip number 5. Don't get caught up in the moment. The excitement and the fascination of being at the beach, the expanse of the ocean is mind-boggling, especially for people who live on the interior of the country. The beaches in Iceland are beautiful, and it's kind of surreal, almost like being on another planet. The coastline of the Pacific Northwest is beautiful and majestic, but be careful that you don't get caught up in the moment and forget all about safety, especially during good weather. A beautiful, calm, sunny day can give you a false sense of safety. It's easy to forget that you're in a location where many people have died, a location where you could lose your life or the life of a loved one. Sometimes you'll see a large group of people, maybe tourists, gathering in areas that you know or suspect to be dangerous. Don't let others give you a false sense of security either. Most people from the interior of the country, any country are unaware of the dangers associated with visiting the ocean. Stay vigilant, stay safe and sound. Don't get caught up in the moment. Safety tip number 6, never turn your back to the ocean. Many sneaker wave victims were walking along the beach when they were hit by a sneaker wave. Walking with friends, walking with family, walking the dog, walking alone. About 38% of all incidents in this study involved beachgoers walking along the beach. Usually when people walk on the beach, they walk on the wet sand closer to the water because it's easier to walk there. In addition, these beachgoers are often talking with their companions and they're not paying attention to the surf. It becomes a real safety issue when you're walking in an area where sneaker waves are common. On these beaches, you need to be vigilant and not take your eyes off the ocean or simply walk further away from the water to be safe. Taking selfies. Be especially cautious when taking photos. If you're taking photos and you are close to the water's edge, designate someone else to watch the ocean for sneaker waves while you concentrate on getting that great vacation photo. For your information, many people have died while taking selfies or other photos and not paying attention to hazards around them. Safety tip number 7. What do you do when you're hit by a sneaker wave? If standing, try and move with the waves wash up the beach. You want to get as far away from the water's edge as possible until the wash turns into backwash. If the backwash is weak enough, you can continue moving forward up the beach. However, if the backwash is deep and forceful, brace yourself and maintain your footing until it's safe to move further up the beach. If you're knocked off your feet, immediately attempt to establish a footing to stand up. Don't give up. Don't stop trying. People who give up are sometimes swept into the ocean, where survival becomes much more difficult. If you get your footing, move with the wash up the beach. When the water turns into backwash, continue up the beach unless the backwash is too deep or too powerful. Then brace for the backwash and just try to maintain your footing. When the wash turns into backwash, stand sideways, making your profile more narrow, allowing your body to cut through the backwash. Spread your feet apart for stability. If you use a walking stick, plant the stick as deep as possible into the sand and form a narrow tripod shape with your feet. Lean into the backwash. When the backwash subsides, move up the beach to safety. If you're pulled into the ocean, don't panic. The initial effects of cold water can make you gasp for air even when you're underwater. Try floating on your back to catch your breath and get your breathing under control. It's critical that you understand that the initial effects of cold water can pass in less than 1 minute, 60 seconds. Knowing this can help you stay calm and survive. Once you have your breathing under control, yell for help, blow your emergency whistle, and then swim to shore. Safety tip number 8, children's safety. Teach your kids about ocean hazards. The ocean is not stationary like a swimming pool. The ocean is constantly changing. Therefore, it's far more dangerous. If your children are good swimmers in a pool, it doesn't mean that they're going to be good swimmers in the ocean, where your children have to contend with waves and backwash, also known as undertow, currents, rough and cold water, bodyboard surfers, and so on. So make sure that you teach your children what to do if they're caught in a riptide or a sneaker wave. Have your children wear a life vest and carry an emergency whistle. If children are going to be within 150 feet of the water, make them wear a life vest. If in the water, wear a life vest and a wetsuit. In addition, they should have an emergency whistle attached to a lanyard attached to their vests. Outfit your children in bright colors to help you see them if they're swept out to sea. If your child is swept out to sea by a sneaker wave or a rip current, this safety gear will dramatically increase their chances of survival. Proximity to children. When near or in the water, toddlers and young children should be no more than an arm's length from you. Teens and adult family members that are in the water should be under constant observation. Don't allow your children to play on logs. Logs on the beach, even on dry sand, may look safe, but they are not. A wave can easily roll a log over a child or adult and cause serious injury or death. Teach your children that logs on the beach are not life rafts to play on or jump on to stay dry from sneaker waves. Instead, teach them how logs become death traps when hit by waves. Trapping you underneath the log causes serious injury or death. Safety tip number 9, the buddy system. When you're walking on the beach, always try to go to the beach with other people. Even if you're only planning to take a walk and you're not going swimming, you still need to be with someone else. Sneaker waves rarely capture everyone in a group and drag them into the ocean. Frequently, someone, if not most people, managed to maintain their footing and escape the wave or swim out of the water. That's the person who can call 911 for help. If you're walking alone and you're swept away, nobody's calling for help. And your loved ones will always wonder how you drowned and if there was any foul play involved. If you must walk alone, wear safety gear. Wear a wetsuit, a life jacket, and a whistle to increase your chances of survival if swept away. If you're swimming, you should always have someone swimming with you who can help if there's a problem. Even if the buddy swimmer is just watching you from the shore, they can still call for help if you need assistance. Buddy on shore. At a minimum, have a buddy on shore watching you swimming, fishing, walking on a jetty, whatever. Just someone who can call 911 if needed. Safety tip number 10, the family dog. Use a dog life jacket, especially if you're walking your dog where sneaker waves and undertow and rip currents are common. Consider keeping your dog on a leash. If your dog does not obey, keep him or her on a leash. That's the best way to keep your dog safe in case of an emergency. If your dog is swept out into the ocean, do not attempt to rescue your dog. Your dog has a much better chance of surviving a sneaker wave than you do. Folks, we have one more safety tip to go over, but before that, I would like to ask for your help. If you feel like you've learned something valuable from this safety briefing and you want to see more briefings like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I will be making both safety and security briefings on a broad range of topics designed to keep you and your family all safe and sound. Safety tip 11, attempting rescue. Government officials always tell you not to attempt a rescue. Instead, they say call 911 for help. The reason they say that is because the statistics for people who attempt rescue to rescue drowning victims in the ocean surf zone are very poor. The person often ends up drowning along with the victim. Even when the rescuer survives, they frequently fail to make the rescue. In my research of 98 sneaker waves, I found that 44% of these cases where someone attempted to make a rescue. And hey, I think it's great news. I would want someone to rescue my grandchildren if they got swept away. Unfortunately, 32% of the people who attempted rescue ended up drowning. Another discouraging figure, 30% of the people who attempted rescue failed to rescue the victim. Water was too rough, lost sight of them, many different reasons, but they never successfully made the rescue. If you add rescuers who drowned with the failed attempts, you end up with 62% of rescue attempts failing. Those are not very encouraging odds. To be clear, I'm talking about Good Samaritan or family member type rescuers. I'm not talking about lifeguards or other professional rescue personnel. This chart shows that family members and relatives make up the largest group of people who attempted rescue, and that makes a lot of sense. The second largest group who attempted rescue were Good Samaritans, coming in at a close second. When I look at those two groups, it tells me that I should always bring lots of family members with me to the beach and go to popular beaches with many beachgoers, also known as Good Samaritans. But folks, in reality, it depends. I'm probably going to receive a lot of criticism over this next comment, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to tell you not to attempt a rescue. I think that only you can make that decision. You're the person on scene. You can see the water conditions. You know your level of experience and capabilities. You've done your prior planning that included bringing safety equipment. You've observed the water and examined the beach for hazards. Only you can decide if it's worth risking your life for someone else. What I would say is this. If you decide to attempt a rescue, make sure you don safety equipment and you use a flotation device before entering the water. Officials tell you to take 10 seconds to think about what you're doing and consider the grave risk associated with attempting a rescue. I would say take that same 10 seconds to don your safety equipment, rescue gear that you have with you, and start splashing cold water on your face before making your final decision. The safety gear will increase your chances of survival. Also, if you visit the beach frequently, consider training. If you and your family visit the beach frequently, consider taking near-shore swimming rescue training. There are also classes for the entire family. Search online for the classes nearest you. Folks, please help me share this Sneaker Wave video. You can do this by sending a link to this video to your family, friends, coworkers, or anyone whom you believe needs to see this safety briefing. If you're a teacher, it would be great if you could share this valuable life-saving information with your students. We need to get the word out. Also, if you have any additional safety tips for avoiding sneaker waves, please put them in the comments section so that everyone can benefit from your experience and knowledge. Security professionals and teachers or others who are interested may want to purchase the ebook version of this safety briefing. It includes many actual sneaker wave incidents that enforce the need for each safety tip listed in the briefing. The ebook version also includes locations around the world where sneaker waves are common. This is important for those who work and travel overseas and therefore need to know about these hazards. I'll be putting a link to the ebook in the description where you can click on it and go to the ebook version. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can watch all my safety and security videos. This is Safe and Sound with Gary. My name is Gary Saylor. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for watching.